On a stormy night in November 1971, a man jumped from a moving airliner over the forests of Washington state, carrying $200,000 in cash. He was never seen again. No body was ever found. No confirmed trace of him surfaced for years. To this day, his real identity remains one of the great unsolved mysteries in American aviation history. It began on the afternoon of November 24th, 1971 at Portland International Airport in Oregon. A man paid cash for a one-way ticket under the name Dan Cooper. He boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 bound for Seattle, Washington. Nothing about him stood out. He looked, by all accounts, like any other business traveller that day. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper passed a note to a flight attendant. It stated simply that he had a bomb in his briefcase and wanted her to sit with him. He briefly opened the briefcase, revealing a mass of wires and red cylinders. Whether it was a real device was never confirmed, but the threat was taken seriously. Cooper's demands were specific: $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 parachutes to be ready and waiting the moment the plane touched down in Seattle. The flight circled Seattle for hours while authorities on the ground scrambled to gather the money and the parachutes. Passengers on board had no idea what was happening. When the plane finally landed in Seattle, Cooper kept his word in one respect. He released all 36 passengers in exchange for the cash and the parachutes. But he kept several crew members aboard and ordered the plane back into the air, this time toward Mexico City, with a planned refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. Cooper instructed the crew to fly low and slow, with the landing gear down and the rear air stair open. Unusual specific requests that suggested he knew exactly what he intended to do. Sometime after 8 o'clock that night, somewhere in the dark sky between Seattle and Reno, Cooper lowered that rear air stair himself. He parachuted out into a raging storm over a remote, heavily wooded stretch of southwest Washington state, taking the ransom money strapped to him into the dark. He was never seen again. No confirmed sighting, no verified remains, no arrest. Just a man who stepped out of a plane and disappeared into the wilderness. The FBI launched an investigation they codenamed Hijacker. Agents combed the forests of southwest Washington for any sign of the man, the parachute, or the money. Over the following decades, that investigation grew immense. At one point, the FBI had considered more than 800 people as possible suspects in the case. None of them were ever charged. Despite the scale of the effort, no individual was ever definitively tied to the hijacking through physical evidence or confirmed identification. For nearly a decade after the jump, there was no physical trace of the ransom money at all. The case sat cold, its central mystery unresolved. Then in February 1980, an 8-year-old boy was digging in the sand along the Columbia River on a sandbar known as Tina Bar. Buried in the sand, he found a decaying package. Inside were bundles of cash, $5,880 in $20 bills. The serial numbers matched the ransom bills handed over that night in Seattle years earlier. It remains the only physical trace of the money ever recovered. The discovery reignited public fascination with the case, but it didn't answer the central questions. Where had Cooper landed? Had he survived the jump at all? Theories multiplied for decades. Investigators studied wind patterns, parachute mechanics, and terrain, trying to narrow down where in the wilderness Cooper might have come down. The investigation continued on and off for 45 years. But in July 2016, the FBI formally announced it was closing active investigation of the case. The agency said its resources were being redirected to other priorities. After nearly half a century, the file on Hijacker was set aside, still unsolved. The hijacker's true identity and ultimate fate remain unknown to this day. No further arrests, charges, or confirmed identifications have followed since the case was closed. It remains to date the only unsolved case of air piracy in the history of United States commercial aviation. A singular gap in an otherwise resolved record. More than 50 years later, the money from that night is largely still missing, the parachute was never recovered, and the man who called himself Dan Cooper was never found. What happened after he stepped into that storm remains officially unknown.